rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you please remain standing for a moment of silence and reflect upon the sacrifices that our servicemen and women make daily, as well as their families and friends and support systems. Thank you.
Oh, no.
So again, I want to thank everybody for attending, and I want to thank Faith Ann Butcher. She sent us the Hamlet surveys yesterday, so I want to thank you. I read through some, and we can get you guys the links, so in case anyone here wants to see. It is a study on Route 52 and US Route 6 and Route 6 in Hamlet. So there is some interesting points in it. We can get you the link before we leave tonight.
And Mahopac, too. Mahopac.
And Mahopac.
Mahopac.
Well, I said Carmel, Mahopac. Yeah. So it expands all of it. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said before, there are notes up here from the prior meeting if you wanted to take them. We're going to go around and do the introductions to everyone that is here in the seats and here at the tables as well, because it's going to take a whole community to get the future of Carmel to be what we want it to be. So,
Everybody sign in.
yep. So Greg, we'll start with you since you're there.
Gregory Fulchetti, Town Council.
Carl Stone, planning board. Craig Paper, planning board.
Rose Fabiano, zoning board.
Bill Rush, zoning board.
Wait, Jerry?
Which will be Jerry? Jerry? Say who you want. Jerry Rositsky? I see you.
Judy Mira. Nancy Bates Patton. Michelle Baker. Rick Rangel.
John Woods. Rich Town.
Colin Carey. Larry Sachs from the Chamber of Commerce. Monaco. Charlie Lynch from Mahopac.
Robert DeLucia, Oakville, Jefferson.
Microsoft CLC.
John Hallett, small businessman,
Vince Storano from ECB.
Joe Charbonneau, Town Council. Mike Carnazzo, Building Inspector.
Rich Franzetti, Town Engineer.
Bob Douglas, Editor, Mayor
John Schneider, Town Council member.
Susie McDonough, Town Council member.
Penny Schmidt, supervisor, but Susie's running the meeting tonight. She's chair.
Well, we're all running.
Uh,
Oh, I thought you were going to say, okay, I thought you were going to start something. With the agenda, we wanted to, and Jonathan, what we thought would be one of the best ways, because this is a huge undertaking. The mic's not going? Say. This is going to be, is that any better? All right. This is going to be a huge undertaking. We're going to start, of course, with all of us meeting, and eventually we will have to expand and probably have to hire someone, because along with the master plan, we're also doing the code, so we're doing them simultaneously. So there's a lot of information, but before we went out and hired somebody, we wanted to kind of get what the community is looking for. And we do have money set aside. We put money set aside in the budget. I think it was $125,000.
Sewer District too.
budgeted in the budget that's currently
Yeah, that was like
budgeted
over 500.
for consultants to
Consider-
discuss with this, because we realize that this is another huge undertaking, and we need professionals involved too. So there's firms that are going to guide us and assist us along the way. So, with all of your input, then we'll cull all that together and we'll bring the firm in at some point. We haven't gone out for an RFP yet for consultants that we're going to bring on. So at some point we'll be doing that. But at subsequent meetings, follow-up meetings to these meetings, they'll be joining us at some point, but just not right now.
What we thought about doing this at this meeting, and we are going to also ask for any additional committee recommendations. So right now we had 4 committees that we kind of want to break out into. And Jonathan, do you want to kind of explain what's going on with those?
Sure, there are a few different subcommittees. This is much better, right?
Yeah, yours is really nice. go ahead.
So there are a few different subcommittees that we've been discussing having broken into. And now tonight isn't going to be anything other than just informal discussions, brainstorming breakout sessions to try to come up with some of the most important issues for each one of these subcommittees. And then I think we're going to, instead of limiting it to everybody just being on one subcommittee, kind of open up the discussion for all 4 of them later on in another breakout. It's going to be quick. I mean, no offense. Thank you guys for coming out. It's the middle of August, and this isn't a normal time to be having large discussions like this, so it's great to have the input. But we'll try to keep it where it's going to be productive, and we're not going to be here for a few hours hearing a lot of the same. So we're going to probably do about 20 minutes where we'll discuss what the specific focus is for each subcommittee. One is going to be looking at zoning. We're talking about things like our community composition, things that would be in regards to maybe identities of certain neighborhoods that we have throughout town, industries that will be allowed and designated in certain areas throughout town. That's one thing that we've already discussed looking at is possibly changing certain zoning. In fact, as recently as I think 2 weeks ago, we had someone at the Zoning Board of Appeals who was looking for an interpretation. They got it as a negative declaration, but we are looking at changing the code that's going to be more open to the definition. So we want to look at things like that, and we want to discuss things that have been problematic previously and concerns that we may be able to address to streamline the delivery of those services, leading us into codes. Codes, we need to discuss things like signs. We've been talking about variable message boards as signs, who would be able to use them, where they'd be able to be located. We want to discuss things in regards to multifamily and cluster zones in regards to where our code is, specific corridors. Some other things that we might want to discuss in regards to future development, maybe eco-friendly building materials incorporated into design, pushing ourselves forward into kind of being in a town of the future, talking about more about how we're able to maybe have sustainable energies, reduce carbon footprints, a lot of different things. That'll also lead over into another one of our committees, which is infrastructure. For me, infrastructure right now seems to be the biggest dollar factor that we're going to have to address, and it's going to be the most difficult thing to overcome if we're going to look for progress for our town, and hopefully in the end reducing the financial burden that's put on residential taxpayers. Really the only way we're going to be able to expand our commercial base is going to be with some increased infrastructure. And just one of the aspects that we need to talk about is going to be an asset management plan. We're looking at asset inventory. Presently we're part of a New York State pilot program. We've been doing that for, I believe it's almost a year and a half now we've been with that. And they're only doing an inventory on one of our water districts. Four sewer plants.
Yes.
I told you I was going to.
That's all right. That's what we're talking between.
Just a quick one on that, yeah.
All right, so it's sewer districts 4, 5, 6, and 7, which are the smaller sewer districts. We still have 3 other sewer districts that would have to be, or 4 other sewer districts that would need to be looked at. The biggest one being Carmel Sewer District 2. Plus, we have 14 water districts which aren't being looked at as part of this pilot study. This was mentioned at the last meeting, so.
So that's that was just something to piggyback into our asset management plan. We need to do every other water facility we have, our distribution networks. Presently, we're discussing doing a survey of the 52 miles of distribution in Water District 2. We're looking at doing a resolution to approve a study for Water District 2 on their water treatment plant. We just got numbers back from the same asset management company that did the pilot program with the state to try to get some numbers, and they are upwards of over $750,000. Across all the water districts and sewer districts, it's a substantial amount of money, but when we take a look at what the future of our infrastructure is going to be, it's information that we have to have. It's near impossible to come up with a comprehensive plan that's thorough if we don't know what our inventory already is, when it was placed in service, what our replacement costs are, life expectancy. So large expenditures are going to start there, and that's just to get information that we need to then make decisions going forward. Some of those items that we'll talk about as well with infrastructure should be roads, sidewalks, water, sewer. And then another add-on that we wanted to have was going to be more of a community liaison group that we could try to start working more and incorporating towards the future, which would integrate some leaders in civic organizations, the business community, government, school, and then general public as well. Some of the items that we were just thinking about at that point was really using this as more of a springboard for what we're going to do as a community. One of the things that brings our community identity is how we, one, support each other whenever there's a time of need, but two, whenever there's a natural emergency, we always have a lot of different organizations that step up in different ways. And this community liaison committee is going to be one way to try to integrate everybody so we all are able to communicate better with each other, not just through this program and through these agendas for our town's future discussions, but also for any emergency basis that we may have. God forbid there's a natural disaster or a mass casualty, we can all organize together and work together, as this community is great at doing. It's one of the things that I think sets the town of Carmel apart from many other communities in our area. And then from that point, we're going to have some feedback from those breakout sessions on those items, see what other items you guys want to discuss. Again, nobody's going to be assigned to that one committee, because then right after that, and we get all the feedback, we figure maybe we'll do 5-10 minutes where everybody could discuss all the different committees and all different ideas, and then we'll do a little bit of feedback there. Hopefully nothing more than an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're done. But we want everybody to have input on everything that they feel is important and everything that they feel would be really beneficial to the future of the community. So this isn't going to be the only opportunity. We're hoping that this is going to open avenues of communication for our organizations to give us feedback between these meetings. We can have just ad hoc meetings with Councilwoman McDonough or Supervisor Schmidt, myself, different committees that have different concerns. We also have no problem setting up time meeting with our professionals. One of the greatest things that we have is the resources of our employees, our management of our departments, our volunteers for our boards. I mean, everyone's paid the smallest of stipends that you could possibly imagine, so I truly consider them volunteers, but we have a lot of valuable resources where if we can work together, we'll find a solution to any problem, and that's what these meetings are really about. And now we're going to find a solution to the future of our town and how to make it the best town we can.
And thank you, Jonathan. And just maybe this is a little bit better, yeah. And just real quick, when I was looking at this this survey that Faith gave me, it was some of this stuff was very interesting. That one of these, why are people coming to the hamlet of Carmel? And 72 people reported they came to the hamlet of Carmel to work 5 or more times a day. Why are people coming to the hamlet of Mahopac? And 73% said they because they drive through to go someplace else. Okay, so some of this stuff, I really want people to read through this because it shows what people also are looking for in here. They're looking, the number one on both of them was clothing stores. There was a hotel conference center. There was fine dining. There was coffee shops and public waterfront facilities. So if you guys can look at this, it's really actually pretty neat of what this survey did. I don't know, maybe Faith, I don't know how large the people were that came and did this with this survey, but there is some good information. Larry, I'm sorry.
What I was going to say, in reference to that plan, they studied the hamlet of Carmel, which you said was a very small area.
Yeah.
That is a very dense commercial corridor. So people
Yep.
don't pass through. Mahopac, our hamlet, is a very small hamlet with extremely large commercial corridor. So if you ask them where they're going, if they're going in the direction of Stop and Shop or Acme, they're passing through, but really they're shopping our region. So we have a regional.
Let's hope. Yeah, and it shows in here, Larry, a 5-minute, a 10-minute, and I believe a 15-minute drive-through of where they're going to. Are they driving 5 minutes from here? They driving 15 minutes from here? Or are they driving 10 minutes from here? So it's pretty neat. So anyone who is going to be involved in the future of Carmel, you may want to, just look through this and see what you can pull out of it. And I did want Kenny, the supervisor, just to give a brief update about the Swan Cove, because again, that's another very intricate part of the downtown here. They could go do with the parking, with some more, the lakefront that we have there. So Kenny, if you wanted to give a quick rundown on that.
Just real quick, Swan Cove, you're all familiar with that. It's the lakefront property the town purchased back in February. The buildings are down, as you've all noticed, which is, it opens it up. It's much nicer looking out now towards the lake between the bank and the Chamber building. So now going forward is we're in the planning stages and the design stages of what we're going to do with the actual Swan Cove property. Our original intent was most of it was going to be used for parking, municipal parking, but we kind of modified that now where we're actually going to use probably 70 or 80% of it is going to be park. So we're going to leave that waterfront look. We're going to, create a park setting, a pocket park or a passive park, if you will, to complement the Chamber Park. So the Chamber Park's going to flow in to the Swan Cove Park. So we're in the early stages of designing exactly the way, we want that to look. And the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee is going to have a lot of input into that because it's related to parks. So we're going to be starting that very, very shortly. And the bank properties, as you know, we're negotiating with the bank to purchase 4 lots that the bank owns, one being Mike, and Faith in the chamber where the chamber building is. But that building will eventually be taken down, as part of the scope of our full build-out of the municipal parking area. Because the problem is, and we're all aware of this, is Mahopac lacks parking. They lack parking for merchants, employees. They lack parking for customers that want to patronize the merchants. There's just no room to park. You could actually drive around town 3 or 4 times trying to find a parking space. So that's something that we're going to have to create over where the bank parking is, where the bank lots are. That's going to be a municipal parking lot eventually for downtown Mahopac. The diagonal parking will eventually be eliminated. The state DOT for years have been telling us that it's not safe, and I agree with them. It's not safe. If you ever try to back out of those parking spaces into Route 6N or out onto 6N, it's very difficult to do. So that'll be eliminated at some point once the municipal parking is built out, because we realize we can't eliminate parking spaces until we create new parking spaces. So the whole intent of the bank properties is for parking. The Chamber Park, we believe that the design of the Chamber Park is going to be modified slightly towards the front of it. Where the current fountain is, I believe the fountain is going to be eliminated. We're going to take that fountain out of there because although it's nice and a lot of people like to look at it, it's not a very attractive fountain the way it's set up right now. It really isn't. So if we're not going to improve or upgrade that fountain to make it look like a real fountain, where the water's spraying out of it nicely, then there's really no sense in keeping it there. All right. So that area where the fountain is out to 6N is in our conceptual design of that area will be eliminated, and there'll be parking spaces created there at the front of the Chamber Park. And I hope the Chamber Park doesn't object to us doing that. I think there's support for it. And the person who actually donated that, there's going to be a conversation had with that individual at some point to let them know that that's our intention. We're just not going to take it down without having a conversation with that individual first. So the full design build out that what we're trying to create there is going to be really, really nice for downtown Mahopac. The sidewalk is very narrow in front of the businesses where it currently is. We want to bump that out, so we want to make a wider sidewalk for downtown Mahopac where it could be more user-friendly, pedestrian-friendly, if you will. And the park, there will be parallel parking along that sidewalk once we kick that out. New lighting, there's going to be new lighting, which we already purchased the lights. We have the lights, they're Hanover lights, antique lights, if you will, to match the ones across the street. So they'll be on both sides of 6N. We're going to put like a motif, a theme in the sidewalk. So it's not just going to be a concrete sidewalk. We're going to put pavers in there as well to accent the sidewalk to make that more attractive. There'll be planters there with nice flowers in it. Listen, guys, I was up in Algonquin, Maine. I'm not sure if anybody's ever gone up there. It's the most beautiful village, town that you ever want to drive through up in New England. The shops that are along there are absolutely beautiful. They have wide sidewalks. They have all of that. It's very pedestrian and user-friendly. We'd like to create something like that for our downtown Mahopac to make it really look nice. And I've said all along, the New England look is really very nice. It's very attractive, and a lot of people like that look. So if we can kind of, create something like Algonquin, Maine in our downtown Mahopac, that would be really, really nice. It's a destination for people that they want to go to and want to be at. Right now, I don't think we have that. I really don't. I don't think we have that look that we all want to try to achieve for our downtown Mahopac. The Hamlet of Carmel, everybody's been up there. It looks absolutely beautiful. When you're traveling down Route 52 towards the courthouse, that whole area is really decorated nice, and it looks beautiful. There's no reason why we can't create that for downtown Mahopac as well. So we want to try to, you know, those improvements and those changes are part of this whole discussion. That's going to be incorporated into it. But I just wanted to, you know, just let you know that Swan Cove is moving forward. Chamber, there's not going to be anything done with your building till at least next year. So you don't have to worry about, you know, scurrying around right now looking for a new home. And by the way, through our discussions that we've had, there could be a possibility that we might be able to create something for the chamber in the whole scope of what we're doing down there. So I just want to put that out there. We're not looking to just kick you guys out and say, find a new home. We're generally concerned about that, and we want to create something perhaps for the chamber in that location somewhere, in that footprint of the bank properties and the Swan Cove property off the side. So that's part of our discussions as well. There's going to be bathrooms down there, so the public doesn't have to use porta-sands or whatever they're called these days. Gotta go, porta potties. We don't want that. That's the Chamber Park. That's downtown Mahopac. There's no reason why we can't build bathrooms for our residents and our visitors to use while they're attending the concerts in the park, or if they just want to go bring their families to the park and enjoy the gazebo, enjoy the park, the view of the lake. We need bathrooms for the folks to use. So bathrooms is part of the scope of what we're going to create down there. So there's a lot going on. That channel, that water channel between the Chamber building and the Chamber Park, our intention is perhaps to pipe that out to the lake. I'm not sure if the DEC and the DEP is going to give us permits for that, or the DOT is going to allow for us to pipe it out completely out to the lake. But we want to pipe it out to a point where we can fill in some of that area now that is not usable. All right. But the area where we may not be able to pipe it out all the way, we're going to have a bridge. There's going to be a walkway or a bridge from the Chamber Park over to the municipal parking and to Swan Cove Passive Park. We're going to have a walkway or a bridge, if you will, to get from one to the other. We're going to have a dock, a fishing dock, where people can enjoy. If you want to bring your children out and fish off the dock, you can certainly do that. There's not going to be any swimming there at that site. It's just not, it's not conducive for that. It's not good for that, and we just don't want people swimming over there. But we may have a little boardwalk, a little dock area at the end of where the property meets the lake, where you can walk along there. There'll be nice lights in that park. We may have a little area set aside to be able to launch kayaks and canoes and perhaps sailboats, non-motorized boats. We're not going to have a ramp there, Charlie. Don't worry about that. We're not going to create a boat ramp there, because we don't want people launching boats there.
I would do that anyway. It's not our business model is not a big day launcher type of thing. So
Okay.
you guys would know more.
So that's something that we're not going to do. There'll be benches there for people to sit at. If you want to enjoy your lunch out there one day, you want to sit at a park bench by the lake, we'll be able to do that. So we're still in the design phase of that creating that whole motif, if you will, and the look of that park. And as I said earlier, the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee is going to be involved in that too, because that's going to be part of their park system. So.
The Recreation Department.
Recreation, yeah, the recreation.
Recreation
This will all
Department.
go. We'll probably have a conceptual drawing or a design, but then we're going to ship that right over to Parks and Rec, and they're going to have their input as to what they feel should be part of that park as well. I talked about some things. There may be other things. There may be a spray park there. You familiar with what a spray park is, where children enjoy going on the water, you know, and they can cool off and spray themselves. Some towns have them, and they're really nice. You know, so.
Okay,
There's
good,
some-
go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to know, does anybody know, how many cars can park diagonally now, and what would be the difference if you parked parallel?
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, we gotta do some of these microphones, I think, because we're gonna get.
Yeah,
not gonna be able
yeah,
to
the
hear us.
people can't hear, you know,
Use that microphone over there, you know.
Is this one working?
Yeah, it's
Or
about
there.
half. You wind up,
Less than half with the
you-
angle.
yeah, you lose about half. When you eliminate the diagonal parking, we're gonna lose about half of what we have there. And I think we have 42 there now, 42, 43 total. So you're gonna lose, 20 of that, 21 spots, once you eliminate the diagonal parking. But that is not gonna be eliminated until new parking is created. We don't wanna do that, because, we don't wanna hurt the merchants because taking parking spaces away.
I guess I'm just wondering if, being you're going to build parking as well, in the design concept of it, could you not have any parking there at all and really have it, I mean, if it's not going to be that many cars that can park there, and really have a walkabout where people can just walk about without worrying about cars, and have whatever you would lose there to go into the parking area you're going to build?
One of the thoughts, just because it's going to be reduced by such a great number, is doing a very large bump out so that we could also, again, back to codes, zoning, revised codes, that we could have sidewalk cafes, but it would probably be limited to maybe handicap parking spaces over there, just to make it easier for people to get in and out, stay closer to the establishments. And then everybody who doesn't have handicap parking, it would probably be employees and patrons would be looking at going either into the plazas, private parking areas, or the municipal parking area. But it'll be very limited what would be there, and the only reason I think would maybe be to incorporate more handicap spots based on, maybe we're going to adjust the width of the spots on the municipal lot to make it wider and more convenient, so we'll lose some, but then we want to, at least be able to maybe incorporate more handicap spots. So it's going to come down to the final drawings, but it'll all be considered, but it would probably still be some handicap spots that would still be there.
Okay, that makes sense. One last question. Who's going to take care of the bathrooms? To make sure there's enough toilet paper and paper towels? Parks and Rec.
Parks and
is
Rec
that-
employees, yeah.
Okay.
They'll take care of that. The conceptual drawing, Susie, just real quick, the conceptual drawing of the bank properties and the Swan Cove property, right now, we're looking at about 104 municipal parking spaces over there. That 104 spaces is what we have on paper right now. That's subject to change, but right now, even with not utilizing all of Swan Cove, even with not utilizing that whole site, creating a passive park, we have about 104 spaces.
Will there be any available space for other businesses to come in, or it's basically what's there?
Well, this is all the stuff that we're going to be talking about tonight. You guys are going to be talking about tonight and bringing back to us, because we don't want to make the decisions. So when we go out into the different committees, write down all of the questions or your suggestions or your ideas. Every idea is up. We want to listen to everything and see what can work. So when you go into the committee, write down all this, because I don't want this meeting to become a question and answer period, because that's not what it's meant to be. But definitely when you get into the individual committees and we do the breakout, bring them up, because if some people don't think that it should just be handicapped or, limited, you need to tell us, because this is a community event. This is a community master plan. It's not the town board or, the planning board or the zoning board. It's everybody in the community. Whoever wants to get involved can get involved. So 20 years down the line, I don't want to hear somebody saying, why did you guys do that? Then why didn't you come to the meetings, So get involved, ask questions, and this is going to be a long, lengthy process. So, by all means, do that in the breakout room, because I just don't want it to become a question and answer period.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Judy.
And just real
Yeah.
quick, Susie, the DOT, New York State DOT, is going to be redesigning the whole traffic light system at 6 and 6N is going to be redesigned. It's in the process of, they're designing it now. It's probably a year and a half, 2 years out, but that whole 6 and 6N, that whole intersection is going to be redesigned with new traffic lights to allow for access into our municipal parking. They're going to consider that in their design. So those lights may be moved back. The bank entrance, the current bank entrance, is going to be closed at some point and moved further down. So there's going to be an ingress and egress for everybody, including the bank, going into one entrance, going in one entrance and coming out another entrance.
Including the drive-through.
The drive-through, the current bank drive-through is going to be closed. So the drive-through is going to go, as Susie mentioned, in the ingress and egress that we're planning to design for that whole intersection. So that whole system, because right now, that traffic system down there, they made it worse by eliminating the turn arrow. When they shut the green turn arrows off, it created a whole new set of issues for us. We're meeting with them, with the DOT, to try to encourage them to either, don't just shut them off, give us a solution, help us create a new design or a new plan that's gonna work, right? So you're all familiar with that, you read about it in the Mahopac News, thank you, Bob. I've met with the DOT on many different occasions to try to encourage them to do something over there, to at least reactivate them until they do the work on the intersection. So, I'm sorry, Susie,
Oh,
go
no,
ahead.
no,
I just
that's
wanted to
good.
mention that
Yeah.
that's gonna,
We're gonna do some, the breakout into some of the, different communities, the different, departments, so, Jonathan?
Okay, I guess at this point, I probably want to keep a couple people on the side, like Mike and Rich and Greg and the board members, but maybe we can kind of go around, and I want to integrate members of the public, members of the business communities, members of our boards. So I think maybe what we'll do, there are four committees, maybe we'll just count out 1, 2, 3, 4, and kind of like how we introduced ourselves, maybe we could just call it off as we're going around, and everybody, remember your number, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that's all we have to remember, and then we'll break up into those numbers. So,
Joe, you're not.
hold on, Joe, you're hanging out, right? You're definitely, yes. So, 1, Nick, 2, John, 3. He's 1, all right?
Just pick a number.
2, 3. No, 3.
You're 3, you're 4.
So we're just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to say that over and over and over again. Don't worry, because, again, this is completely informal. This isn't saying you're going to be on the zoning committee, you're going to be on this committee. Everybody's going to be able to have input on every one of these topics. We just want to get everybody broken into 4 groups. All right? So we're going to start it all over from the top. 1, 2.
Larry.
4.
Why don't you just call them up?
Just tell one spread there, Jonathan.
We haven't even gone through everybody.
we gotta go
That's
around.
the tough part.
Just tell them.
Frank,
Rich.
right. All right, let's do that, Susie.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's going to be funny because there's going to be 11 and 2.
All right, so whoever,
Okay, zoning's gonna go over there.
whoever
Okay.
wants to be
The
on
only-
one zoning, go over
Yeah,
there.
the only thing we're gonna say is if one committee's too abundance in numbers, we're gonna take some out. Zoning is gonna go over here, codes are gonna come down here.
Codes over here.
Infrastructure over there in the back right, and community liaison over here. So again, zoning, codes, infrastructure, community center. And guys, we're gonna do this within 5 minutes, we're gonna start, so.
John, you're over there.
Communities right here.
Over there. Yes. Are you a 4? You're a 1.
All right, so Kenny, who do you wanna, which one do you wanna go to?
Codes or zoning? I'll go to zoning. I'll go to zoning. Codes over here, right?
Okay, zoning is in the back left,
Yeah, yeah.
code is here in the front, right, left, codes, yep.
No.
Infrastructure and community. Okay.
Susie's got to,
We'll go talk to them.
Mike, zoning. Zoning. Yeah.
Kenny, go grab one.
Yeah.
Because there's three.
Let me grab it.
Somebody else.
All right.
And it's 20, can you put 20 minutes?
20 minutes?
20 minutes on your timer? Will you grab one? Infrastructure's back there. Okay.
John, you're going to go to infrastructure?
Yes.
I was just going to take Rich over to infrastructure because that's where I think Rich should go.
Okay.
I think that's where he'd be.
Community, come here, Michelle. Come on. So community can be anything and everything we want, okay? One of the things that I noticed last year was when we had and then here at Town Hall, yes, here at Town Hall, we had ice and water. So when we had a community together, we would say, okay,
Describe. Who wants to be described?
Bring it there.
Take notes. Everybody know each other?
Kind of what committee are you guys? Two. So kind of like eyes and ears?
Right, see what happens? Now, just so you know, there are codes, okay, that, they have to abide by. You can't have garbage around, you can't have, socks, signs falling down. The problem is, even when we get money from the state, okay, the owner of the building has to buy into it, meaning they have to say, yes, you will do. This happened twice already, 2 years ago. No, because if they're not doing anything illegal, you can't. See, a lot of this comes into code enforcement. That's it. Because I feel that code enforcement has not been strong enough. Because people start building stuff not in code. Like, for instance, there's that somebody downtown where there's a half of a wall that's, remember the old main path pharmacy? Okay? Where it's half of a wall. It's clear right next to Bliss, to the right of Bliss. You're looking at Bliss on the 6th side, to the right of Bliss. They have the building, and then on top of it is just, it's a wall of fake stone, but no roof or anything. So they thought they could get away with it. The building department stopped them, but to me, it was stopped too late. It should have been stopped as soon as you saw the first thing go up. It's not. They should. Because, well, that's one of the things that we need to do. And it's architectural review today. We did hire an architectural review.
We used to have a review board, right? An architectural
An
review.
architect review board we did used to have, but unfortunately, it wasn't, there were many projects that they did that should never have been done at all. So there's a fine line, like how do we make this town look good? And that's part of it. See, that's part of all of these. They're all intermixed. They really are. How do you enforce it? The first enforcement thing is to get it on the books, to make it in the code. You can. You can do whatever. We can do whatever. We can do whatever we want to do.
Well, good enforcement comes from, clear-cut codes.
Yeah, the codes is very important because Mike or someone will go out there and they're like, well, the code can go either way. So the codes have to be strengthened. Some of the codes have not been looked at for, oh my God, 30, 40 years. They have to be updated. And then, our code has been very
So are we looking for a group, community liaison, that can incorporate concerns of Rotary, Lions Club, any citizen, where you could have a group that would take input from them and then take that input and talk to zoning or infrastructure so the community feels they have a real voice?
Yeah, even the Chamber of Commerce. Because what happens is we don't go to every Rotary meeting or every Lions Club meeting and tell them what's going on. The communication is lax. It's very lax.
There's two thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was saying, like, there's things that the Lions Club, the Rotary Club, the Knights of Columbus, you know, all of these people that have great suggestions, because they're out there in the community all the time, and they may know what may or may not work, but we don't hear it because they don't tell us, we don't ask them, you know? There's no, yeah, they were online, that's a big thing. Yeah. Like what Kelly was saying, that she does everything online. And that's what, like, I love going to stores because I need to see it, I need to feel it. But these guys are all like, no, let's, right, Kelly?
You're in charge of social media. So this is what our community liaisons are going to talk about is food?
Wegmans, I would be so excited.
And that, right.
I think that there has to be some type of evolution of the business community. It's got to incorporate more business types. You're right, no one's going to go into a retail shop, but they're going to go and get scanned so that the custom tailor in Thailand will give them custom shirts for $20 a month. Something crazy. But that's unfortunately retail. So yeah, the brick and mortar is really dead. Even the banks, the reason we're getting parking lot is because they say brick and mortar is dead.
Nobody goes into the bank.
People deposit bank checks with their
Not like
phones
it
now.
used to be. You used to have to wait online at the bank. You don't anymore because they all do it either on their phone or on the internet. So the times have changed. And yeah. But there is, do we discuss the IDA anymore? I know they get
The EDC, I think that they disbanded the IDA like 4 years ago, but I don't think they brought it back.
I think they brought it back. Right, the Economic Development Center, the IDA, they're the ones that are supposed to be bringing companies in here. The problem, unfortunately, with some of it is if we're limited where you want to go, because if you order a store, you may or may not have Stop and Shop. They want to pay. Like to me, I would love to have.
Nothing in the code limits anything like that. In fact, last night we had to do a discussion item in regards to putting a moratorium on vape shops, the smoking things. And there's nothing in our code that limits how many of any industry you can have, locations of industry. Now, you look at Armand. Armand has limitations. You can only have 2 of each type of retail establishment. So 2 pizzerias, 2 bakeries, 2 dry cleaners. They have limits in their code. But yeah, we don't have anything like that right now. But that's something that we could definitely talk about as a code thing later on.
Pizza places.
Yeah.
Condiments, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was doing.
Yeah, and that was one of our things yeah. Okay, so what's the difference between patrolling here is presentation and people can park their car and
Kennels? There should only be one kennel in this town. I agree wholeheartedly.
Only on the left side of
Well, the place where I was in high school. After you pass the high school.
So that's why, you know, until we fix the infrastructure part of it,
See, I've never heard anything at all about his business. He might have heard of it, I never.
Now you're trying to privately own it. We didn't get rid of it. The town did get rid of it. I think Mr. Borelli and Gerard, that's private
Great House?
property. Yeah, that has nothing to do with the town. Yeah, Tom wanted to say something.
Going back to the whole idea of liaisoning with civic groups, I have personally found great success. I've spoken to both Rotaries and offered to other civic groups. I've gone around and talked about the Chamber's vision project as it relates to the town planning. That's one thing. And send out speakers. I do it all the time. The second thing is, and I've mentioned this to you, is that the Chamber would be willing to help manage having a series of public discussions, Q&A, bring in planning specialists, etc. And that's how you draw in the public and the business people at like roundtable discussions.
Right, it does, but you look at this, is the second roundtable we've had, there haven't been more than 50 people. Okay, so I think maybe you can come into where maybe possibly have to do something.
With better promotion,
Online, where.
Like a
I
survey.
don't know, I don't know, in Instagram, I don't know, I don't do that stuff, but I know this was open up to the entire community, AFAC and Carmel, get 50 people.
If you could do like a survey where you ask, that's online, see what people want.
See, something, yeah, so, maybe for the next meeting, you can come up with some suggestions on how the community can interact with either a survey, with, what kind of thing they want, some type of, speaker, what they want in the community, and almost, like, I wanna say, like a group calendar, if the Lions Club's having something, put it on here, because then if you know you're having a dinner, and we have the ice and stuff, hey, we're gonna bring the ice and stuff down there. I mean, it's throughout everything.
Also, when the Chamber has their monthly dinners, that's an opportunity to speak about this.
Right.
We always have little discussions at the dinners.
What, Susie?
Everyone's disconnected, yeah. And that's what people want, like, if we're gonna try to bring people from different areas, okay, here, it may be a win, okay, we're gonna go apple picking up at, Harvest Moon, then we're gonna come down to Lake Mahopac to do something, but then what can we do? And if it's not, if you don't have some kind of communication where they can go on their Apple phone or whatever, their iPhone, and say, hey, this is on here, hey, let's do it. We have that here in town hall. Yes, you have to sign up for it. We've been saying that at all the meetings, and it's on our website. Go on our website, and there'll be a link. And all you do is put your phone number and anything that's going on. Because that's just for emergencies. Just for emergencies. It's not for, yeah, the school uses it for emergency, the town uses it for emergency. It's not a blanket plan, hey, we're having a broken house today. People get pissed off and, but that's something we can ask, in a survey, we can say, would you like, if we can do some type of class, would you like to have, you know what I'm saying, not an emergency.
Right, like a community event class or something.
Yeah. Like this there. Right, communication is key. We've mentioned it at the town board meetings, Maybe like at the chamber fairs, you know?
We have lots
maybe
of,
you wanna
we have
set
lots
up-
of events to
Yeah.
promote. The street festival, September 30th, that's one, and like I said, the monthly dinners.
Can you research that, Kelly? Because I would not, I mean, I hate to say it, I am not technically inclined. As you know, we couldn't even get the TV on today.
Oh, I
okay?
remember that.
We spent all this money and it's like, okay. Yeah. So let's start this communication. Who's gonna do the recap? One of you ladies or men will have to do the recap because I think we're gonna just quickly say what we talked about. Somebody's taking notes or something. One of you. Yeah, the first thing is.
Tom, you're elected.
And then Kelly, volunteers Kelly to help with some type of an app or something. Yeah, I think, yeah. But that's pretty, with the communication of community, that's kind, when you get the schools involved, because there's so many things that the school does, because we're all the same taxpayer. It's school, town. It comes out, or you open up your wallet, it's school and town, And I just think that we need to start working more closely together. You get the PTAs, that's a good thing.
There's another idea. Every 6 to 8 weeks, Larry and I write an op-ed piece based on vision and town planning going forward. So that's another avenue we have. I can include something.
No, we could do a community thing, and hey, where's
Dumas. I think he left.
Okay, that's something else.
Yeah.
We will ask Ron Dumas and also,
Dave Proper and Examiner.
And Dave Proper, those three, if once a month, Dave Proper,
P-R-O-P.
They're great. So what we'll ask is once a month, we can do a community,
It's called an op-ed piece, or guest column.
once a month. And maybe the group of us can get together and write something.
About one area of the whole plan, so you don't overwhelm them and you educate them at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I personally, and I'm going to go based on as candidates, doing the videos. People get very engaged rather than reading something. If you've got somebody talking to you about this,
That would be in her, Melanie's tool. Video, Kelly, video on social media about things about the project. Pictures and videos.
Down to, so-and-so, hey, get involved in your town's future. We're having meetings tomorrow night. Let's go.
You could even have pictures or videos from parts of the town as examples of what posted. That'll grab attention.
So the goal for the next meeting is to somewhat set up a, I don't want to say our wish or our goal, really, and timeline of when we know what and how we're going to do it. It's very easy to say we're going to do this. The hard part comes when you go home and all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, I can't do that, I can't do this, I can't, So to me, if we're going to do it, we need to follow through with it and make it where we're not going to fail. If once a month is too much for an op-ed, then we do it every other month, or we do it seasonal. I don't want to overwhelm you, because I feel if you overwhelm people, they back out. They don't be new. But if somebody can do it monthly, I think it's awesome. And what we'll do is we'll share each other's email addresses, so we can email each other, like we do like a little email chain with all of us, say, hey, what about this, what about that, in case we don't meet.
I would think that if we had an organization or a group that organized and put together what's going on with the town in the different areas. And that group, not the events, not the street fairs, not the whatever, not the events, but what's going on. The zoning, infrastructure change, what Ken just said, I'm sure many people don't understand what's going on with that park. But have a forum, a group that has all that information, publishes that in a video or an op-ed, and has a forum, maybe at the chamber meeting, we're saying we've got a half hour for community input on these items. Please come, because we always have, seem to always have room. Please come for your input so that we could actually reflect the needs and wants of the community. So if we set up a structure like that, now if nobody comes, that's one thing, but at least we've set it.
I will say,
You gotta get through that, because that's how we make change. People
I
are gonna
have got-
complain. Exactly, but
I have,
you have
I
the
have
forum.
had success getting that input by my speaking engagements at like the Rotary, the Knights of Columbus. They want to tell me stuff, and I listen. And it works. Yeah, it is. But you can, with the right promotion and the right enticement, you can get some of the public to come in, as well as business and building owners to come in and participate in that process. It's been done in other counties. Orange County was very successful in doing stuff like that, where the stakeholders came in and listened and spoke about their opinions on things, and it was collected.
I mean, we can always have a, I know when I work with Senator Ball, we call that constituent day. And I had the entire day open, and it was open to our policy. Anybody can come in and talk about anything they want, any problems, concerns, help, whatever it is. It made me set that.
I took advantage of it.
Yeah, that sounds
You know
great.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
right.
Where there's not, I don't want to say, yeah, you might have to put a time on it. I mean, that was my job, so I was there for the entire day. But that, you know, could be, we want to hear from you, the residents, you, the constituents, come in between, and I just don't want it to be me, I want it to be us. Okay? And I'll buy the pizza or whatever, and we can just set up a room, or we can meet in the, we're probably doing the opera conference room, and then anybody that wants to come in, I don't care if we do it on a Saturday or Sunday, or, you know, one afternoon, or something like that,
What's important here is that people have the vehicle where they can speak about how they feel about and understand about what's going on with the town. Now, whether they come or not, we always have that open forum. We have the open forum, and nobody comes, we're like, okay, we're going to go along and do what we think, but we had this forum to bring people in, to tell them what we're doing, and get their thoughts and ideas. I think that goes a long way for
so we
the
can
town.
certainly set that up, so kind of maybe like the, like the recreation town, the first Wednesday,
You know, also, we all know that the reality is today is through social media. That's it. And like I go on Carmel Families, Carmel School District, and they impact families. That's where a lot of it came in about 66N, you know, and getting on there and talking to them. And I, you know, parents, and I try to explain, listen, we realize that, you know, families raise children within your communities on a rotating basis. Let somebody watch the kids for an hour or two while somebody comes.
you know, I have 5 kids, you know, I put my children wherever, you know, and, you know, part of me. They're an extension of me. You know, they weren't rat. You know, they weren't my chair. But, I think, so in wrapping up, in op-ed, whatever, how much, with media, your social, and then having a face-to-face possible day. I mean, I don't know, what did I say?
We would decommission once we build the university, when, utilizing a microphone.
You could have a future of Carmel. Ooh.
Yeah, right, exactly. Right.
I want you guys
If we have, Susie, if we have everybody's email, I have a copy, I'll send it to you.
Yes.
It's a good report.
Susie, I don't know if this is the place. I
In
like
this,
have two things
Susie,
in my head
yes.
that I hear a lot about on social media. One is a county center type place for shows and graduations and things like that. And the other is a pool. And you need a swim team in this. But you need a swim team. Well, isn't that supposed
We
to
need
be
sewers
happening
and
down
water.
by
Sewer and water first.
down by where the state, where the liquid is?
Because I wrote on, you can't do that, this is private, or I was going to write. But yeah, so we'll recap it, because I know Jonathan went around and said, just trying to think of some timelines, meaning, do you want to do the op-ed every month, every other month? Do you want to have an open meeting where people come in during the day, at night, and on the weekends? What there is, yeah.
This was done by Patterns for Progress. Patterns for Progress. They're a consultant for towns to help read.
Can you pass a piece of paper so we can put all our emails down so you can send them? Would that be rather than? Tom is going to send around a sheet to put your email, your name and email.
progress. They're out of Orange County. They're doing the planning for Brewster Village.
Right, but Tom, what they're saying is what happened, when I was reading this, there's some stuff in there that they cannot do. They're saying that they want to take out something that's on private property. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's in town, it's
Yeah.
in Halifax town,
Yeah.
but you can't do it.
I haven't read the whole thing
You know,
yet.
so I just, in reading this, I want to make sure that there's not a whole bunch of things that they're trying to
I just started reading it myself.
Yes, that is what she's got to sign it. But, all right, so we're gonna wrap up your report. Yeah, we'll, and this will grow, like, we'll do these emails, if anybody again has any suggestions. Like you say, maybe we can go to the chamber one night. We go to a Rotary one night,
I have Susie's.
you got mine, right? You can go to the Knights of Columbus, you can go to the Lions Club.
Oh, the Carmel Hamlet Civic Association.
Yes, the Hamlet Civic Association. That'll be one of the first things we'll do, and I may have a list of some things which we can do.
But
Oh, Tom has it. Yep.
we don't have
Hey, what about a position, a community liaison position in City Hall? Could be volunteer or volunteers.
Well, we could actually, like how we have the recreation committee, that's a advisory committee. We can actually make, I can ask the town to make a community advisory.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's pretty much the town.
But you kind of have to be a resident of the area or the community. So if you come from Katona, yeah, right. Let's have a good idea.
I like ideas and then the solutions. I just, the famous thing is people, well, let's do this. Okay, I'll let's do it. No, you guys figure it out. But that's a this whole master plan is for everybody to say what they want, but also give us I don't know if we need to wait for that, but we But that makes that would be nice because almost like she said, showing up. Everybody's
Don't you have a shredder?
Not big enough for here. Not for the whole community?
No. I mean, the office.
Oh, everything is shredded.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I could definitely bring that. Yeah,
You can hire. We had like 10 years
Okay, everybody,
of
we're gonna
financial
wrap
documents.
up.
I hired
I
somebody to
thought
come.
Jonathan was
It was like
doing
100
that.
bucks, and they shredded all that because it had all financial data, Social Security card numbers, that kind of stuff. So it's it's like 100. It's like $100 to do it every couple of years. Yeah. I want to see it shredded. I want to see it shredded. Yeah. Right.
Thank you all for
When was
coming.
this written?
Nice.
Tom, when was this written? When was this written? This August. But you wrote something.
It's very good. And some people may be able to make tonight, but next month they can't. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yep, like, yes. And everybody's input is welcome, I'll tell you.
Right here.
So it was August
That's what we're gonna have
2017?
now. We're gonna take our town back.
10 months for the first public meeting. But we've been working quietly.
All right, if everybody can come around the table.
You'll recognize a lot of stuff.
Oh, they are?
that occurred here in this meeting.
Hey,
Thank you.
I think there is
I still got James, I have to get James and you together. Hey, John, I think we want to quickly go through some of the points. One designation, okay. Okay, so real quick, what we're going to do is we're going to ask. Okay, everybody, we're going to. Oh, I hope these aren't turned on. They are. My mom is going to email me and say you just yelled in the mic. Okay, here we go. All right, we are going to start with over here. Mike, which committee were you on? Rich, can you just make sure he's on now? Please? Oh, wow. Thanks, Dominic. Sorry about yelling in the mics. So what we're going to do, thank you everybody again for coming and breaking out. This is the first of hopefully some very many successful meetings. We're going to just have each committee pick a person and just briefly go through what they, so we're all in the know, because communication is the key to successful town of Carmel. So Mike, you can start.
I walked around, I went to a few different committees or whatever, groups. Larry Zach seems to have a lot of the ideas from the zoning, I think. He was taking notes, he has a bunch of things that were there, so I think that
So
he would
Larry,
probably
you're the
be
man.
best, if that's okay with you, Larry.
Sure.
Okay.
Larry, use the
Want to use the
But you
microphone?
have to use the mic.
Okay, thank you all. I'd like to thank Frank Del Campo because he gave us the summary starting from the 80s and 90s of why we have the current zoning, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said a little bit. At that time, they were looking at the 55 and older as a way to keep our senior citizens in town and to keep they were more affluent, and to keep the money in town, and they can stay with their grandchildren. Really good, valuable reasons why we have so much senior housing. It would allow them to sell their homes, stay in the community. Younger people would move in. Some of the issues that we faced we always will face, is our water sewer issues. You need the sewer to have any kind of development. One of the interesting things he said is the town has ended up taking over a lot of the water districts because of different reasons, some of them economic. We talked about the 3-acre zoning at the time seemed like a good idea. It was kind of bantered around that it's probably outdated. We talked about the need for commercial development to provide, A, shopping for the community so people aren't running to Danbury taking our sales tax, and also to provide entertainment, but also we're looking at the sheer simple fact that why would you have to drive 5 miles to go shopping when you should be able to go shopping within a mile or two of where you live? It's a waste of resources, it's a waste of time, it's probably dangerous. There was another study where they had done the condos in the 80s. We had too many condos. Then we went to single family. We went from half-acre zoning to acre-and-a-half zoning to now 3-acre zoning. It's time for a change. One of the major issues probably for going to 3-acre zoning was traffic. There were a bunch of studies done. Where we are right now, we have great recreation, which they had put into place. We have bike trails. We have parks all over. We have ball fields. We have wonderful recreation. We talked about the millennials. We talked about the millennials staying in the community. They're not going to go to 3-acre housing. They're not going to go to the acre-and-a-half, $500,000 home with an $18,000 tax bill. Many of them are not even going to go to a condo that's $300,000. They need affordable rentals. They need affordable housing. They want affordable housing that's walking distance to shopping and activities. So we're literally talking about clustering around, let's say, our hamlets, around our business corridors, where they could walk to places. Even my generation, the big buzzword is, I want to walk to town. So what we'll see is we'll see that. So we have a big need for rentals. Another issue we talked about right now is abandoned homes and homes in neglect. And I know there's some ordinances to try to get those. Those are working their way out just by the economic cycle. They're being bought, fixed up. And the nice thing is as they get upgraded, they go from the worst home to the best home in the area, so the whole neighborhood is getting lifted up. And then they talked about the shed ordinance, which is just making a lot of work for everybody and a lot of problems, so rewriting that. The other thing regarding water sewer is to have grants and a grant writer for our sidewalks, for our roads, for so many of these things, especially our water sewer, which is, you're talking tens of millions of dollars. So if we can get assistance to improve that would be a big plus. And anything else, guys?
Larry, maybe you can clarify on two things. One, on the water sewer, we actually had a vendor that we utilized for 2 years on a contract for those. We put in applications left and right. We didn't see much of a return on the investment, but it is something that we will be looking at when we discuss the entire infrastructure master plan again. Can you maybe just go a little bit more in depth in regards to the shed ordinance? Was there anything specific about that? Because
Sure, I'll 1 sec on the water sewer. The problem we have is, water sewer is a big buzzword. We are having our lakes designated as special areas. Maybe there's a chance having our sewer lines, et cetera, improving our downtown hamlets. Grants, as I study them, are incredibly complex. You can apply under 200 different categories. So the grant writers are almost like a lawyer, coming from 8 million different angles to get a grant. It's a lot of work. Frank is the best one at grant questions.
Larry, just
But you're the smartest.
Larry, in the CFA, the CFA application for this year, we applied for multi-million dollars in grant funding through CFA for water and sewer. So that application was just submitted just recently. We're hopeful that we're going to get some, this year, that the town of Carmel will be awarded some of that funding. But I just want everybody to know that we have submitted that application, and the county assisted us in preparing that as well. But we think we covered, or we know we covered most of, what the water content, the sewer issue up in the hamlet of Carmel, the water issue. So there is funding we're trying to get from the state on the CFA for these projects.
Yeah, that's
additionally, the contract that we have with the town's engineering consultant firm, that has grant writing built into it as well. So they assisted on the CFA, they assisted with submissions, and they do that as well. So we definitely have that. But again, back to that shed, just because I wanted to see.
Thank you. That's fabulous. I know lots on the plate with the grants, and it's so complicated and so difficult. The sheds, I think Mike and John could fill you in.
We fixed the sheds.
We'll talk about it. We're going to spend some time as a zoning board with Mike at our next meeting to, kind of look through some of the outdated codes that keep coming up over and over and over. You know, it's not fair to the constituents of the town, especially when you have a shed. Look, here's your house. You don't want to put a shed in the middle because you're restricted by setbacks. It's common sense. You want to put it in the corner of a property. So I think some of our setbacks are outdated and need to be looked at based on what zone, where, you know, you got to be within reason. You know, Secors are different situations, tighter houses, what have you. So stuff like that we need to start looking at.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
You know,
We
there's
already-
other,
We did that one already. That's, if you do a shed and your lot is up to a quarter acre, it only has to be 10 feet from the property line.
right, we're still having some situations come up where it's,
People can't put sheds 2 feet from the property line. You're not allowed to. So
right.
that's what causes problems when people have their ladders and everything else in between there. And building code doesn't really allow you to have structures right next to each other either. So there is a reason for the 10-foot setback. That's pretty much why we stuck that.
Yeah, I would definitely say any recommendations from our boards, please bring them forward, because we could at least hear reasons on supporting why a change is needed, and then also hear justification on why something's put in that way, because there's gonna be sides to everything, but we need to hear all this, because we changed our buffer zone for parking lots for a 10-foot setback, say, a buffer area. We can absolutely relook at what our sides, what our back, what our setbacks are, structures, sizes, even broken down, like you made the recommendation, within neighborhoods, because we do want to get down to this community identity. So where we have denser populations should have different code that would be more in line with what their character is for their neighborhoods, I guess, as the designations would be, and that's all going to culminate from this. Now, Rich, I think you did want to add something?
I'll add it when I go to my next one. It'll fit into what I have to say for the next one. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, we wrote the code for the shed so that the smaller the lot, the closer you can be to the property line, as long as the shed is small. If the shed gets bigger, then we pulled it further from the property line, is what we did for the last set, which was 3 years ago, I think.
I think so. But yeah, well, I'm open to revisiting anything with
Yeah.
code, zoning, anything.
So.
Thank you, Larry.
Who's the next one? I put away my glasses and I don't have the agenda.
The group number 2. That's not it.
Group number 2. Oh, Greg, can I have my agenda?
Who's number 2?
Codes.
Code, oh, code.
Yep.
Nick. That's me.
Good evening. So we talked about the codes part of the town's future here. This revolved around signs, enforcement, multifamily, specific corridors, and eco-friendly. Our conversations largely centered around the multifamily dwellings and touched a bit on specific corridors. So while we were discussing this, of course, it all revolves around infrastructure, our water districts and sewer districts. But it also does revolve around the codes that we currently have in place with 3 acre lots or senior housing and basically nothing in between. So there's really 2 big prongs that need to be attached there, and attacked in order to really allow for younger generations, single people, young professionals to be able to rent, and that's really one of the biggest deficits that the county has, that our town has with regards to our tax base, is a deficit of young people that really anchor themselves here. And so with regards to that, the types of housing that we discussed, things like housing over or rental over retail, cluster housing, apartment complexes, townhouses, that kind of stuff. Really, there does need to be a very in-depth conversation, as I'm sure it will come up, about making sure that you're doing this in a smart way, right? You don't want to have, in the middle of a nice community that has all single-family houses, just because you changed the code now to allow for multi-family, does not necessarily mean it should be a multi-family area. So there does need to be some very in-depth discussions about where does it make sense, how do you make sure you put these types of zoning in the right places, and then how do we make sure the infrastructure is in place to allow for that to be built up. One of the other big parts of our conversation was around where we currently do have infrastructure, and if we manage to change the codes to allow this other types of dwellings, where would it actually make sense right now to do that? And again, that revolved around the water district and sewer districts, and talking about the capacity and how the Mayapack's capacity is roughly at capacity, about 2/3 right now, and that the exploration into other avenues of what we could do with sewer is being currently vetted through a couple of through an agency that's doing studies on that. Conversation also over in Carmel, in the Carmel Sewer District there, was discussion on how actually that infrastructure is quite old, and we need to start thinking about how do we improve that infrastructure, and how do we make, if we need to build a new plant, where does that go? What happens to the old plant? And can we put enough capacity there, not just for the current growth, but also well into the future, so an entire next generation doesn't have to worry about Carmel area running out of sewer capacity. I mean, there's a decent-sized corridor there with some lots that are still vacant that can grow up into be multifamily, they could be mixed use, they could be commercial, and really develop there. So those were largely our conversations. Was there anything else, Kenny, that?
Covered it.
All right.
Really, the big thing is the infrastructure west of here on Route 6. The Route 6 corridor currently is no sewer access or water. Really, water and sewer. If you're going to do any infrastructure going that way on 6 towards Baldwin Place, it really needs to be sewer and water, both. You know, sewer, obviously you need, so people can maximize the envelope of their property. Because right now they can't. They're limited to what they can do on their property going that way because there's just no sewer available to them. So that's one of the things that we really talked about is developing that side of Mahopac on that Route 6 corridor. One of the things is priority is to get that infrastructure in.
Thank
Is that
you.
perhaps to Group 3?
Group 3.
Okay. Or if I just start and anybody else can chime in here, but kind of already covered everything here, but I wanted to say I think one of the key things that kind of came out of we had some specific discussions about some projects and things, was, feeds into all of this. You're talking about, Kenny just mentioned, we're looking at expanding the sewer infrastructure down Route 6 so that they can maximize utilization of their lots. Well, I think we have to step back, maybe, and think about, do we want maximum utilization of all the lots down Route 6? Or do we want to look at a different long-term plan? Susie, with the last meeting, you talked about having town centers or village center kind of concept with a visual appearance and a feel for the downtown, those areas, as opposed to this kind of strip mall effect we kind of see on Route 6. So I think what really came out of, I think, our discussion in the big picture was understanding what we have, figuring out what we really want the town to be, not next year, not 5 years from now, but 20 years from now, and making sure that we then understand what the infrastructure limitations are to getting there, okay? And then, once we know that, then we can identify the projects that each and every project progresses in that direction. So to that end, a couple other comments that were made. There was a comment about grants in our group, and I heard grants coming up before. And you mentioned that we've applied for a lot of grants. And this is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. As an engineer, I do municipal work a lot, and much of our work is driven by grant money. And I can't tell you how many times I've had clients that got grant money for a project because somebody had an idea for a project, not necessarily a bad idea, but without necessarily a big picture plan, and they spent the money, and 5 years later they said, oh, we shouldn't have put that there, because that's really not conducive to what we want to now, what we think we really want for that area. It's all about the plan and making sure that they get grant money, well, we got it, so we spent it. Well, wait a minute, that's just foolish. So I think that was maybe a takeaway from some of what we were looking at. So I think the plan for the town, the asset management and the inventory, the GIS program, those kinds of things are a first step toward understanding what we have now, then developing a plan for what we want it to look like, and between those two, understanding, okay, now, does Route 6 corridor expansion make sense, or is that promoting something that we don't want the town to be later? Did I cover everything?
So just to follow up on what Carl, so a little more specifics in that, one question that came up is, what is the purpose of the downtown restoration? Is it to bring people to eat? Is it to bring people to the laundromat? Is it to bring people to the lake in an active or a passive role? So again, goes back to something Carl touched about. What do we have? What do we want? What are our needs? How do we get there? What is the purpose of the downtown revitalization? Was a question that came up in the group. Another question, it was a focus, because Kenny, you did mention Swan Cove. You know, there's a lot of different ideas going on there. Again, what is the, you don't need to answer it now, what is the purpose of Swan Cove? Is it parking only? Is it boating with kayaks? Is it gonna be public access? Is it gonna be limited public access to just people who live in Carmel and, or Mahopac, or Mahopac, or people who can come from, you know, New York City on any given day? Do you limit the number of passes? You know, there are people who live on the lake who are part of a lake district, you know, who are paying taxes into that. There's a concern now that you've opened up an avenue for, I'll call them quote-unquote outsiders, I don't mean it in a bad way, but people who aren't paying taxes there. How does the town get there? The parking study was brought up. The one that the town does, is the municipal parking gonna be a feed parking? You know, that's a question that came up. There was talk about sidewalks, you know. How do we get sidewalks? If we want to vitalize the downtown area, make it pedestrian friendly, do we bring sidewalks up Route 6N? Can we bring them up 6N so people can walk along that corridor? You know, further down toward, let's say, what was it, Laghetto, you know, I don't know, it's Blue now, right? So Blue. You know, so those were the things that, a code issue that came up was something with porta potties, you know, how do we, you know, now you have this beautiful lake and you drive by, you see nothing but porta potties, you know, no offense, Mike, so not picking on you. Another idea that came up, again, and some of the group talked about it, changing the traffic flow. Can you close off 6N and make the roads change around a little bit, change the directions of roads? Again, it goes back to what do we have, what do we want, what are our needs, and how do we get there? So that's what came out of our group. The only other thing I wanted to mention with grants before is, you know, and Carl kind of touched on it, grants are limited, you know, you have to, there are very constricted things you have to do with grants. And we talk about water and sewer here, and I mentioned it before and I'll say it again. We have 13 water districts. They are not hydraulically connected. They are scattered. It's buckshot. Everywhere in town there is a water district. We have 8 sewer districts. Again, buckshot, it's scattered around. They're not hydraulically connected. So we can't create a single utility authority in the area. Not that we kind of mentioned it because the gentleman worked there, but you know, we can't have one single utility authority because every one of those districts pays a different rate and is operating with different parameters. They have different back capital that they're paying and whatnot. So again, we need to just understand that piece of the puzzle moving forward, because it's easy to say we need more sewer, we need more water, and it's true, we do. There's no question about that. It's a matter of the constraint we have. And somebody brought up the question, Councilman Schneider goes, what's the biggest impediment to our growth here? It's legislation from both the state and from the New York City DEP that, again, we have to know how to get there by working with them or through them or by them or whatever, right? But those are our impediments to this growth and to this thought process. We want it all to happen, now we got to figure out how to get there, so.
Okay, we had to, we spoke about community liaison, civic organizations, government. So what we talked about is communication with the community, with the town. So we sort of volunteered, or she volunteered Kelly to look into, as a millennial, to look into sort of apps to communicate throughout the community to make it easier. Because look at the turnout at a meeting like today. There aren't many people here. So something that might allow better communication throughout the community. Also throughout the idea of either Bob Dumas, Eric Gross, Dave Proper, journalists, to do like community op-eds, like a guest column about what's going on in the area with the town, the projects, and frequency we weren't sure about, monthly maybe as it's important. We weren't really sure. Videos are something that, you know, young people are sort of attracted to somehow do some kind of videos on social media on parts or progress of what's going on with the town. Another idea was to work with the chamber, to maybe have a booth at their fair, to sign up people, or because there's you know, ways to communicate better with them, or to let them know, maybe have some charts up, or you know, let people know what's going on. And then also, maybe an open day for residents to express their thoughts, to maybe come to our town members or something like that. So I think that's, the big thing is communication, to try to get whatever we're doing out to the community so that we get feedback, so people don't come back and say, I never knew what you did, why did you do that, I have a better idea. You know, we want those ideas. So I think that was it.
Perfect, yeah, that was good. Thank you. Yes, you
Yeah,
may.
sure.
Just grab that mic, Tom, please.
We also discussed about speaking engagements, going to the civic groups. I've had great success in going to civic groups to talk about Vision 2020. And through that experience, people ask a lot of questions. So you do get a lot of good input. So I would like to see that expanded with the town's help. And also, there is possibility, we have to figure out how to attract people to come to a public roundtable so they can hear from maybe guest speakers, et cetera. They can ask a lot of questions, but more importantly, they'll speak up and we'll get input, which is needed. So those were those two public reach out projects.
Great, thank you.
So Tom, I think what you're saying is there should be a group of us, doesn't matter who it is, we can decide that later on, to kind of take this on the road. Take this on the road. To go to the Italian American Club, go to the Rotary, like Mahopac Rotary. You know, and up in Hamlet of Carmel, same thing.
The Civic Association.
You know, we can't forget the Hamlet of Carmel, they're part of us. The civic associations. Senior centers, correct, senior
Right.
centers. So it can't be, we can't just limit it to this room. We gotta go out in the community.
That's my point.
Right, I agree with you, the chambers, things like that,
In
so,
fact, if you want, Larry and I would be glad to coordinate with you.
yeah.
We have department heads as well as, chamber people or whatever. Go out and do, a series of brochures.
And maybe even, the school board meetings, get this on as a topic for discussion with the school board to get them involved.
Well-
Get the school community involved.
Yeah, well, Kenny, that's what we were talking about. The school and the town, we're all the same taxpayers. And I think that it would be the best if we get, when we go to these places, we have the school and we have the town being represented there. Because to me, you get everybody at the table, so then if somebody has questions, they're answered right there. You don't have to say, oh, go to the school board and ask, or oh, go to the town board and ask. You get all the players in one spot, and you go on the road show, I'm gonna call it, you know, the Future to Carmel Road Show, we'll
Take it
call
on
it.
the road.
Take it on the road.
Take it on the road. And by the way, Anthony DiCarlo, our new superintendent of schools.
He's wonderful.
He's fabulous. All right, he is very proactive. He wants to get involved in everything. He wants to be everywhere.
Yep.
So there's somebody that, you know, thankfully now, we have a superintendent that has an
That we
interest
can
in the
do that.
community, that wants to get involved and wants to be proactive. So I've met with him, Susie and I have met with him a couple of times, so he wants to participate in all of this,
Yeah.
which is good. And he lives here.
And then, yeah, go ahead,
Is there a
Tom.
town Facebook page?
Yes, there is.
We do have one.
Sign
Kelly,
up.
we have a town
Yeah, we have
Facebook
a
page.
Facebook
Do you-
page.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't either.
But Kelly said Facebook doesn't usually, but Kelly's gonna help us with apps and all. Kelly, can you help, Kelly, you're gonna have to help us with that. That's why we got Kelly. Thanks, Kel. Yeah. And just one other,
Just volunteered.
yeah, and-
Volunteered.
Not for anything, but the younger people use Twitter more often than Facebook.
well, that's what Kelly was saying, Twitter and Instagram. It's really not,
Like your Twitter?
yeah, Kelly's gonna help us with that too. That's what she said. She goes, not too many people use Facebook, so, yeah, I'm sure Kelly's glad she came to this meeting.
You gotta be
Yeah.
30 or older.
Yes, Frank Del Campo.
Successful when we're trending.
Yes.
Frank, just grab the,
Frank, grab
because the people can't hear.
No, I just wanted to say, as a trustee of the library, you're always welcome to use our community room. We've had several, so that's another venue,
Right.
because our library has done a 3-year plan of our own, which we want to collaborate with the town and the school. So always know that the library can be a venue to bring people to have these kinds of meetings, if you will. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Frank, thank you.
And also, Frank, the library board, right? We'd like to get them involved also and participate in these discussions, the board. And you could be the liaison for it.
See, Frank, aren't you glad you came to the meeting? Yep. I am just going to ask one more favor of everyone, because I did not take notes, because I was helping out. For those of you who took notes, like I know Mike and Nick and Larry and everybody, if you guys can type them up and send them to either Ann or myself, because what I want to do, we're going to make them, we're going to have them for next meeting, and we'll do it digital. Kelly will help me with that. And so everybody will always be kept abreast, because if you can't make next month's meeting, you can always get a copy of what happened, so you're always in the know. So if people would do that, and I'm a timeline person, so if you could do that within a week and get that back to me, that would be wonderful. Sorry. Well, yeah, our next meeting, we were going to think about September 27th at 6:30. September 27th at 6:30. Quarterly.
Can get to where legislation will be made based on its recommendations? Is going to be up to the town to vote on?
Yeah, John, I don't know if
It's, yeah, John wasn't here when we
everything will
said
be
it, yeah.
incorporated into a master plan. And the code revisions at the same time. We're going to dual track it simultaneously, because you can't do one without the other. You really have to do both.
And John, we were saying, we're going to be bringing in a firm.
I think
Because-
shortly.
Because we can't, very shortly, because we can't,
Not a problem, no. Shortly, we're looking at putting a request for qualifications out to professional firms to assist in a master plan. We're going to be doing a scope of work that's going to incorporate things in regards to zoning, comprehensive code review, and recommendations in regards to that. At the same time, we're also looking at the infrastructure side. Again, biggest thing that's really the handcuff to us in our community is legislation and regulation. So we're looking at multiple avenues, but shortly the next steps are going to be looking to get an outside agency to come and give us qualifications so that they could assist us with a master plan, take all these subcommittees' recommendations, and try to incorporate them into changes with codes, zoning, inclusive of a master plan, which will also at that point help give us recommendations on where the infrastructure needs to be. And hopefully we can work closely with legislation at all levels through county, city, and government and state, and we can see a better future. But that really right now is going to be the roadblock that we need to address. We have all the greatest minds, I think, that could collaborate here on a project of this kind of magnitude for our town. And we can come up with a plan, but if we can't make it work legally, then we're kind of treading water for no reason. So big thing is going to be getting
Greg and
in
Joe come in.
people to help us out.
And it could very well be that there might be two firms, one firm that's going to assist us in the master plan, and another firm that's going to assist us in the code revision. So, and it may be one
Maybe another
firm
one for
that does
legislative
both,
side, too.
Or two separate firms that are going to assist in both of those. It may not. And I'm glad, Amy, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. So you're on the county level. You're our legislator that represents your whole district's in Carmel, correct? Carmel and Mahopac. So Mahopac Falls also. Yeah. So thank you for being here. But I'd like to see some representation from the other county legislators as well participating in these, because we have 5. There's 5 that touch or have a piece of the town of Carmel in their district. So if we can, maybe if you can get the word out to your colleagues, see the next meeting, if maybe they can attend and participate as well.
I think it's also great that we are working hand in hand with the county. The county is the one that commissioned that 10-area corridor study, of which 2 of them are inside of our town. The county worked with Pattern for Progress on that to do a comprehensive study. We're going to put that entire study online. It's 260-page, of which we're about 40 pages of it. But it really gives you an idea on what the county's looking at doing as a whole. It's not going to be an individual town's idea. We're all going to be working together across all levels, and I think Amy may want to add to that, possibly.
She's got to come to Mike.
If you could get a mic, sorry, Amy.
Grab a mic, Amy. Larry?
Right there on the.
Yeah, you could say it'll be around.
I just think so one thing that we haven't mentioned at all is how our shared services initiative is going to fall into play into some of this. How the county is trying to consolidate to save taxpayer money, and how that's going to impact the towns. So maybe that's another part of this long-range planning and how that's going to factor into it.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Amy. We're going to be having the public hearings very shortly on the Shared Services Initiative. So each town, each supervisor from the 6 towns in Putnam County and the 3 villages are part of a committee that's been working for, 6-8 months now?
Yeah.
On the Shared Services Initiative. So we're ready to roll it out shortly, so.
We have a draft.
It's in the
We
draft.
have a draft.
Right.
Yeah.
So once that is completed, then we're going to have public hearings throughout the districts, throughout the community and the county to address that, because we have to adopt it. I believe it's by the end of September. The plan has to
I
be
think so.
adopted. Yeah.
October.
October?
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully there are some shared service initiatives that will definitely save the taxpayers money. There's no question about it. And one of the shared service initiatives that has come up, not only by the supervisors, but the highway superintendents, is a truck wash bay. Currently there is no truck wash bay in Putnam County that the municipalities can use to keep their vehicles clean from salt. The biggest contributor to vehicles damage and oxidation is the corrosion. So, and that would involve school buses also. So the school districts will be able to use this wash bay. So there is, an initiative to try to build one somewhere centrally located in the county where all the municipalities can use it.
And they've got it all, I've seen the site, it's at the transportation off of Fair Street. And yeah, it's in the works, hopefully. That'll be a part of it.
Because you may be able to get another 3, 4, 5 years out of a highway truck, a school bus, because the corrosion, the oxidation is the killer. In this area, in this part of the country, is the winters. But if we can keep the vehicles clean and free from the rust and the sand and the grit buildup underneath that rust the frames and the bodies, that would be a big help. So I know the county executive, Mary Ellen, this is something that she is trying to get done.
Yeah, high priority.
She's supportive of it.
Saves everybody money.
Right, it would save the taxpayers money.
Bottom line is the
because we get a
taxpayer.
longer life out of our vehicles, our fleets.
Perfect. Thank
Thanks,
you,
Amy.
Amy. Yep. We're going to get back to you at the meeting. Do not put down September 27th, because I was just informed that there's a conflict on that date. So it'll be the end of September. So we'll get back to you with that. But again, thank you, everybody.
And on a note, we have probably about 5-6 weeks before the next meeting. Anybody at home that's been listening to this that has recommendations, anybody who sat in here who has something pop up in their mind, feel free, communicate it to us. All input is great. We want to vet out every possibility out there. We want to hear everybody's opinion, everybody's suggestion. It's everybody's town's future. So communication is key to success, and this is going to be a very successful program with everybody's cooperation.
Is there a dedicated town email to maybe, a lot of folks use email, right? Something like that. Is there a way that they can submit questions?
Right into the town supervisor's email, and you can get that right off of our website. He's our day-to-day operations manager, and he'll spread the info to us.
We'll forward it to us. And I'll forward it to everybody.
Exactly. Thank you, and have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the summer, guys.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, he asked.